Good day, sports fans and point spread aficionados from Las Vegas. It is Winner's Circle Vegas Legends. I'm Chip Chirimbes, Paul Bovi, and a special guest this week is Mr. Marc Lawrence. Marc was a 2005 Stardust Invitational winner, one of the handicappers extraordinaire who has the finest newsletter on the market for years now. Marc, welcome to the show. How long have you been publishing Playbook?
Well, as I look at our newsletter here today, it says this is a volume 39. So this is the 39th year of the Playbook Football newsletter.
And when was it you started in the sports handicapping business?
Well, I started in the business about 45 years ago. In 1975, and I became a business in 1980. So do the math, 80 to now would be 44 years.
All right, Marc, I have a question. You have a database, and most of your selections and information is predicated on the information that you put in there. Where did you get it, and how did you come up with the concept?
Well, the database was it was designed by a good friend of mine, Tom Scott, who was in the industry for a long time. We were really best of friends, and he designed the database. I helped him construct it, knowing what the questions to put in there and so forth and whatnot. So it's a proprietary database that was built by Tom, and he ended up selling it to maybe a handful of other people, a version to use thereof. But we keep our database well maintained. We call it the well-oiled machine.
Okay.
Because it is indeed the lifeblood of our business here. I go to that. I don't go to sleep at night without checking into my database. Let me tell you.
So you change the numbers constantly with this updated to like the changes in the sports.
Yeah, we have to update the database every day with scores and lines,
right,
so that the questions we can go in and ask, are relevant and they're pertinent. So, and we have a great staff at Playbook, and one of the guys who publishes our Playbook Totals tip sheet. It's the only Totals newsletter on the market. It's Victor King, and he updates the database for us on a daily basis, and it's a task, believe me, just to keep that thing updated and humming and purring as it is right now.
All right, thank you, Marc. Paul, we were talking earlier about how these big conferences have decided to merge, and we have, I think, as a result that maybe isn't what they had anticipated. For example, Oregon's already clinched a spot in the Big Ten championship game, and teams, you may have a situation where a team that didn't make the championship game may have a better record than the team that did, and then the team that did got in the playoffs and lost their conference championship game. Does the team that didn't make the championship game have a better chance of getting into the final 12?
I have to be honest with you on this. I really don't dial into that. I don't dial into rankings or any of that stuff. I dial into individual games. The way I see it is this. There's 12 teams that are going to make the playoffs. It'll all shake out within the next few weeks. Once those teams are aligned, amongst those 12 teams, I'm going to find winners because that's what I am here to do. So I'm not sure how this is all going to play out. I do know that these conferences and the arrangements have gotten really confusing. I mean, look, there's two Pac-12 teams left.
Pac-2, Paul.
Pac-2 to Pac-12 to Pac-2. So it's something that I just don't focus in on.
Okay, I failed to mention at the beginning the Survivor contest. Marc, Paul has got 2 selections among 99 that are left, among close to 15,000 that entered. Almost $15 million up for grabs right there. Paul, good luck the rest of the way. He's on VSiN along with Marc Lawrence. The VSiN radio show every Friday night. You probably catch both these guys' opinion, and it's opinion worth listening to. Marc, you and I mentioned it. Do you think it's better or worse, the system they have now with the college football, what they've done with these huge conferences?
Well, there's a downside to it, and it's what we talked off the air about, and I've long times felt this way, that the college football playoff, since it began, can be detrimental to teams, just given the fact that they could have realistically gone undefeated throughout the season, were prepared to secure a top bowl or now a top bowl seed. They go into their conference championship game and they lose, and suddenly they're out of the play. And that's really, I don't think, fair to teams that had such a great season to be penalized for losing in a conference championship game. And that's unfortunately what happens here now, even more so with the top 4 seeds being so valuable in the college football playoff because it gives them a bye. We could end up seeing Oregon losing the Big Ten championship and falling to number 5, for instance, in the college football playoff. That's not fair to Oregon. because they earned their way into a Big Ten championship game, I don't believe it's fair. So there are holes in this.
And
process.
look what excuse me, Mark. Look what we saw happen to Georgia last year.
Exactly.
You can't convince me that they weren't one of the best teams in the country. They didn't even make the Final Four. They lost the conference championship to Alabama.
Yeah, they fell out of the top four. They fell, they didn't make the playoffs. So
I mean, losing to Alabama. I mean, what shame is there in that? I mean, really. But and Saban probably did his best job ever getting that team into the playoffs, because that Alabama team I thought had a lot of shortcomings. All right, let's quickly hit on a couple of the very top games that are out there of interest. And I know you guys may not have sides on this, but I have to mention this Indiana-Ohio State game. Paulie, the line opened up, I said 9.5, 10, and I thought it was large then, and now it's up to 13 and 13.5 in some places. Are the Buckeyes that much better or over an undefeated Hoosier team?
So we discussed this last week, and I actually thought the line from 9.5, which was the look ahead at that point, would come in. And I was wrong, because apparently it's 13 right now. I just don't see this Ohio State being the force that they have been in recent years. We've seen some vulnerability there, and I'm just not going to diminish what Indiana has accomplished at this point. I just can't see laying this number with Ohio State. I would be a taker here. Indiana has played great football. They've taken on all comers for the most part, and I'm just not going to go against Indiana at this point. So I'm going to take the 13, and that's the way I'm going to lean.
I could say it, Mark. This Indiana's 0 wins, 30 losses, and 1 tie against Ohio State since 1988. They're number 1 against the rush, allowing 72 yards a game, and Ohio State's number 4. Is the difference in competition that great that this number should be where it is?
Well, I guess if you want to weigh strength of schedule, it really doesn't help or enhance Indiana's position.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, you play who's in front of you. You knock down the teams that you're scheduled to play. It's not Indiana's fault, not the player's fault or the coach or anybody, that their schedule is what it is. It was made quite a long while ago, and they've taken out everybody they've played. I'm with Paul on this. I think this number is a little bit high, and it's grown. I think it's grown for a couple of reasons. Number one, Ohio State's a very popular public team. Yep. Indiana is not. As you mentioned here, they've lost 29 times in a row in the series to the Buckeyes. But one of the things, or one of the reasons is there's 13 teams that are currently ranked that have not faced a team that is currently ranked in the college football rankings, and Indiana being one of them. So, they're really tearing into their strength of schedule here, which I think is a mistake. You take a look at the job that Cignetti has done with this football program here. He's been absolutely terrific. When his teams are undefeated, he's 21-2 straight up in conference play. I'm with Paul. I like Indiana plus the points.
All right. I can't see playing against them. I really can't. I was surprised the total is as high as it is, considering what great rushing defenses both sides had. The total was 51.5, by the way. We have by the way, out there, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe. Share this with anyone else you have out there. We are Winner's Circle Vegas Legends College Edition. This is Paul Bovi, Marc Lawrence, and Chip Chirimbes. We have another big game out there, at least of great interest to people in Las Vegas and myself in particular. At Arrowhead Stadium, Kansas is going for their 3rd big upset in a row. They're a small dog, less than a field goal to Colorado. That game may have moved up to 3 at this time. The Buffs keep covering and keep winning. Mark, what do you think about this game? And Kansas has pulled 2 upsets in a row.
Yeah, Kansas is where they want to be here this week also, Chipper. Under Lance Leopold, they've just been absolutely dynamite, and it's where they make all their money at home. Now you're going to dress them up as a dog in this football game against a Colorado team that gets all the notoriety, largely because of Deion Sanders. Give them their due. Colorado's had a really nice football season, but I think the pressure is squarely on Colorado in this game because they can control their own destiny inside the Big 12 conference here. The only thing that concerns me is that win that Kansas had last week against BYU, they were really rather inside out in the stats. They lost by over 100 yards in the football game. But it's still Leopold at home as a dog. Give me the Kansas Jayhawks.
Thank you, Mark. And by the way, folks, that's the type of stuff you get from the playbook each and every week. The reverse stats, like you said, Mark. Thank you very much for that. Paul, Colorado's ripped off 8 straight wins since their Nebraska loss, and they looked so outmanned against Nebraska, and looked like they got pushed around. And here they are, 8 straight covers.
Well, I did play this game at the Open. I went over the 59. Look, this Kansas Jayhawk team, I'm going to give them a lot of credit because they bounced back. They fell behind Iowa State, and I thought they were kind of going to fold, and they did not. Came back 45-36. They actually opened up some distance. Iowa State put together a drive at the end of the game, made it look respectable. Last week, they were a bit fortunate. But what concerned me last week is what has concerned me about the Jayhawks all year. They gave up yards on the ground to BYU, who ran for 4.8 yards per rush with no breakaway runs. Now, the Jayhawks, as I said, give them credit. They had a loss by 2 to Kansas State, a pair of 3-point losses, a pair of 4-point losses, and now they're poised to make a run here after winning these last 2 football games. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. Right. Kansas has had liabilities on defense along the way. They've given up big yardage, both on the ground at times and in the air. So you got to figure Colorado is going to have some success throwing the football. And I think Kansas is also going to put some points on the board. I would lean to the over in a closer finish.
I agree with both you guys here. I think this number 59.5 draws me toward the total. Colorado's going over 6-3-1 in their last 10. 5 of the last 7 meetings between these two teams are going over the total. Those 5 losses, like you mentioned, Paul, that Kansas had in a row were all by 1 score. If they could have turned 1 or even 2 of those around, it'd be probably a little different outlook here. But I think Kansas has got the momentum here, and I think they're a team that started so poorly that still has a chance to make it into the bowl season with 6 wins. Is going to be ready to play. So I'm looking for the Jayhawks, and I'm probably thinking this game might possibly go over the total.
You know, Chip, you bring up a great point there about the momentum here right now with Kansas. You combine mojo with pressure, right, as Colorado's under here. I think it makes for a nice handicap.
You know, that's what we were talking about pressure earlier in games in must-win situations in the other program in the NFL. Does it add pressure to a team and hurt a team approaching the game who are actually out on the field? Those must-win situations, I look to play against most of them. But you know who you shouldn't play against? I'll tell you guys right now, you shouldn't bet against Winner's Circle. Every single day they have a daily podcast giving you free winners, hosted by Sean Higgs. We have Marc Lawrence appears on there. I appear on there. Brian, Matt Fargo, and a number of others, superstars in the handicapping industry each and every day. So come to winnercircle.net and get those selections from top Las Vegas handicappers. One of the final 2 games, this one I have to do for sentimental reasons. I know it doesn't have any bearing on championships, but what used to be the Pac-12, USC and UCLA used to play a great game every year. I'd be sitting in the snow and freezing cold in Connecticut and looking at these people attending a game in Southern California in bathing suits and people running around with the sun. I mean, I don't know if you know, Paulie knows, he's from New York. I mean, once we start November, our life is in black and white. The trees are black. The snow is black. And you turn on this game and it would just uplift everyone. Now they're also ran USC. Paulie's a small favorite, 4.5. I think it is at Pasadena against UCLA. What do you think of what's left of the Pac-12?
Well, listen, both teams have had, look, I'm going to give the Bruins credit because people after the week 2, week 3, they said the Bruins have chucked it, thrown it in, and then they come in and start playing competitive football and actually win a few games. I think that Ethan Garbers and Miller Moss are actually going to put on a show here. And even though these haven't been prolific scoring teams along the way, I look for this game to go over the number.
All right, Mark, this USC team, I might have caught this from your database. 1-4 on the road, and they were favored in all 4 road games.
Southern Cal, yeah, they've, you know, the problem to me with them is 2 things. Number one, Lincoln Riley doesn't know how to spell the word defense. It's gotten a little bit better this year, you know, but he has his problems. He is also much, much better at home than he is on the road, although this is only a crosstown rivalry. They'll be hopping in their cars and going into this game. But UCLA in the Rose Bowl taking points is the attraction to me. in this contest here for a couple of reasons. Number one, UCLA started the season in really dismal fashion. Their new head coach Foster was really poo-pooed upon. They didn't like the hire, and they got out of the gate 1-5. But they've come on right now, unbelievably strong, and they're playing to qualify for a bowl. I'm going to stay with the Bruins in the football game and look for Riley to do what he does best, and that's choke football games as favorites away from home. Give me the Bruins plus the points.
All right, I happen to agree with you, Mark. I think they're the side here, although they're only 4-6. And the improvement on that team, Mark, from the beginning of the season to now has been dramatic. I mean, they really look like a Chinese fire drill, not to be, and they look like a good football. They come to play. They come and they hit you. Paulie, anything with USC and the Bruins?
Well, I would agree with you guys because I do recall UCLA, and I knew they were a football team when they played Penn State, and they actually did not throw in the towel, and they were gashing the Lions in the middle of the line, even at the end, and Penn State had to hold on for dear life. I forgot if they got the cover. I think it was sitting in the balance towards the end of the game. So I do like a high-scoring game. But I would side with the upstart Bruins, who, as you guys have pointed out, and as I mentioned, they started off the year, and I'll quote Mark, dismal fashion, but they have come a long way, and give them credit.
All right. And, so while you're here, don't be afraid to give us a like. Now, I'm going to come to you guys for what you might single out, give out a free play for the podcast. But real quick, 2 games of interest out here. One is BYU and Arizona State. BYU now, after a loss, how do they recover? Do they bounce back? Paulie, yes or no?
I think it's going to be Arizona State. Look, BYU was the team you were waiting for their shoe to fall, and it fell last week. They were fortunate in several games. You could even go back to that Kansas State game. They were outgained in every way and out yardage, but somehow won the game 38-9, and then they had near misses along the way, Oklahoma State, and they finally lose a game. So now I just think the air has come out of the balloon, and I think they're ready for a fall.
Mark, how does the database adjust to a team that won 3 games last year and was supposed to be at the bottom of any conference they might have been in, come up with 8 wins or 8-2 against the numbers so far, Arizona State?
Yeah, what the database basically says here, first let me set this table for you, Chip, is the database only gives you an answer to what it is you ask. It's not going to predict games. It's going to answer questions that you ask. So we would ask the database just what you said. What does a team that won 3 games or fewer last year do when they doubled or almost tripled that this particular season? What they do well is they do well as dogs coming down the stretch, which is exactly the role BYU is in. And I'm opening the door to that for this reason here. There's a really strong angle that we use this time of the year called bubble burst, when a team had their perfect season ruined after starting out 7-0 or better, the rug was pulled out of them, and they really tend to come up flat the next game. But the caveat is this. They come up flat when they're favored again the next game. They can't get their chin back up off the mat. When they're underdogs in the next game, it's a Rodney Dangerfield role for them. They play really, really well to bounce back up in the underdog role. And I also point out what I mentioned earlier, that BYU did outstat Kansas solidly in that football game. So they know to a man that they really outplayed the Jayhawks in that football game. I'm the opposite side as Paul here. I'm going to take the points with BYU.
Great information, Mark, and that's why we use the playbook, because that kind of information only comes up there. One final game before you guys give me who you might like a free play. Texas A&M comes up only 2.5 at Auburn. And I know that the Aggies have to be looking ahead. Next week they play Texas. Mark, do you think that's a big factor here?
I think it is a big factor, but the bigger factor is what the odds makers see in this football game. People say, why is it only 2.5? What you just said. Well, the reason it's only 2.5 is because you look inside at A&M's numbers this year, like a doctor looking at an x-ray, they're horrible. This football team has lost the stats in 4 of the last 6 football games. They're being pushed all around the field, and now they got this big game with Texas up next. And what does Auburn need to do? They need to beat A&M and to knock off Alabama to become bowl eligible. Mm-hmm. Yes, the players, we don't worry about Alabama. We'll take care of them. Our focus will be on A&M here today. I like Auburn in the upset.
All right, Paul, you change of opinion, or you're thinking along the same lines?
No, I'm thinking along the same lines. Look, A&M, looked good at the beginning of the year, but then you look at the competition and use that as a data point. It turns out the competition wasn't very good, or didn't go on to have pretty impressive performances throughout the year. So I just think this is a bad spot for Texas A&M.
Right.
Auburn has played okay football at times, and then there were times that it wasn't that good. But I think they're in a position where they can win this football game. Texas A&M will certainly be looking ahead. I'm going to go with Auburn.
All right, I have such a sour taste in my mouth with the Tigers. I had them against Oklahoma. They had allowed the Sooners. Oh, you're laughing, Mark. Go ahead. They allowed them only 9 first downs until a minute and a half to go. Pick six changed the whole game. And but I think Auburn is the side as well. All right, real quick. The game that you like the most, that you don't mind putting out on the podcast, Paulie. I think you said something about Illinois and Rutgers.
Yeah, I do like Illinois here, and I took them +2. I think the line has flipped, but it's not changing my opinion because I think Illinois is going to win the game. Rutgers has been a very fortunate football team, and their secondary is leaky. Ethan Garbers, who I mentioned before, 32 of 38 for almost 400. Miller Moss, 20 of 28 for over 300. Will Rogers, 26 of 36 for over 300. And then last week, I'm not sure what happened with Billy Edwards, but he missed a lot of open receivers in the first quarter. And look, Maryland punted once. They knocked on the door the entire game, couldn't put the ball in the end zone, lose it in a deceptive final, 31-17. Illinois takes the short hop from Chicago and gets the win in New Jersey, and they win this football game against the Rutgers team, which is just overrated.
Mark, it sounds like I hate New Jersey University bet, but yeah, it's quite all right. I know you're from the East and you've had familiarization with the Scarlet Knights, Paulie. You got one out there for us, Mark?
Yeah, I'm going to look in the Southeast Conference and stay at home with Florida in the swamp against Ole Miss. And I think the pressure, once again, is all squarely here on Ole Miss. And I got to give Florida their credit here. They've really bounced back after a terribly rocky start, and they put themselves in a position to go bowling here as well. I'm not a big fan of the schedule that Ole Miss has played this year. It's very, very weak, and it's a lot of the reason why they put up these powerful, overwhelming numbers. But when they've had to step up in games and lay points, it's been a different story here. They stepped up in a game against Georgia and took points. Now they're going to lay points in the swamp. Give me Florida plus the points.
All right. I as well have an early game, and a team that's leading their conference has a chance to go to championship game. SMU is at Virginia. I think it's a great spot for the Cavaliers, taking the touchdown plus points. I like Virginia possibly to really give the Mustangs a run for their money here. All right, that's it for this week. College preview from GamblersWorld.net, and Winner's Circle Vegas edition.
Hey, Chip, can I hop in real quick before?
Sure, go right ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
Okay, and because we've got the man with us, Paul Bovi, who's got those 2 live tickets right now in the Survivor contest. Paul, I'm going to put you on the spot here, okay? What would it take for a person to approach you to buy one of your 2 tickets where it's at right now in the Survivor? Would you do it or wouldn't you do it? And if you would, for how much money?
No, I would not. Okay.
No, I knew that was going to be your answer.
Okay, because it's real. I've been approached. Look, because somebody's been asking for my phone number. The money, if you buy my ticket, the fair value is $140,000 or so. It's not changing my life, man. So at this point, I want to go for the ride. And if I lose it, I lose it. And you know what? I'm not in the best position because I know what teams are available to whom. There's a guy with 6. As you know, he could have gotten knocked out with Cincinnati last week on the strength of a 2-point conversion. It didn't happen. But I'm going to roll with it, take my chances, and if I blow it, I blow it. But I'll insure myself this week. And maybe if I take 2 teams, I'll play a money line parlay on both the opposite teams, which will be dogs, and hope that I either win both or lose both, so I get something out of it.
Yeah, you give a little salve on the wound by doing just that. That's a great answer, Paul,
Yeah.
by the way.
You know, and you know, Mark,
change your life. Why saw the ticket? I love that.
you know, Mark, he can't use a team twice, and these guys have to be very careful because Christmas Day and Thanksgiving weekend are considered separate weeks.
Yes.
So they have to use those teams that are available. And of course, if you use up those teams in the schedule prior to that, you'll be stuck with nothing. And it has happened where somebody came on Thanksgiving and they had used all those teams up. But once again, I'd like to thank you, Paul, and thank you, Mark, once again. GamblersWorld.net. Log on, follow the buy links, give us a like and a subscribe. We'll be here each and every week. And good luck to everyone out there, and good luck to you guys as well.